Good everyone, welcome to this video, and today we have another one of my advice videos, and today we have a advice video on slow climbing aircraft. Now of course, this applies to quite a few of the aircraft in the game that don't necessarily have the highest of climb rates. This can include aircraft such as F6Fs, as I'm going to show you today, P-47s depending on the model, and also aircraft like the 190As. There's also some Russian aircraft that apply to this, some British aircraft, and all of these, like all of the nations in the game, will have an aircraft that corresponds as a slow climbing aircraft. Now, of course, this is generally how I play them. This may not be something that will work for you, so just remember that. Not all the tricks that I'm going to show you are going to work for you. The majority of them will, because I've seen them work for many people, but at the end of the day, not everything's going to work. And if you do need advice on that, do let me know in the comments below, and I'll get around to answering your comment as soon as possible. So, one major mistake that I see people making about these sorts of aircraft is they immediately deem it as a ground pounder because it can't climb. You'll be surprised how many times I've seen F6Fs with bombs on and rockets on, and they just go and farm. They don't really help their team doing that, and that can even sometimes get them abused from the player base. As a result, this is definitely something that is a bit of a controversial topic because people who throw away planes like this are, in my opinion at least, refusing to learn their aircraft. These aircraft are very capable. You just need time to set them up. And if you don't take time to set them up, you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage here. So with the Hellcat, the climb rate of a Hellcat is around about 2,000 to 2,500 feet a minute. That may sound rather low, and that's because it is. It's relatively low compared to the other aircraft at 3.7, and at least around this BR range. Compare it to a 109, which has around about 4,000 feet a minute climb rate, depending on the model. It really puts it into perspective how much of a disadvantage you are at, especially given that you will be A, slower than them, B, climbing slower than them, and C, half the time you won't be at sufficient airspeed in order to dogfight them, so they will win. But if you take time to set these aircraft up, you learn the enemy's climb path so you can avoid them whilst you're climbing, you can definitely set these planes up and you can definitely give them a black eye. So let's go into the replay, I should say, and let's take a look at slow climbing fighters. Now, I'm not going to cover any examples that are not mentioned, such as I mentioned with the P-47, the Hellcat, 190As, etc. They all should be flown pretty much the same that I'm showing you here. And as a result, it's really down to learning where the enemy climbs, where they don't climb, and you can use that to your advantage. So let's get into the replay. It's not a very long replay, but I'm going to skip ahead most of it anyway, because most of it is climbing. And unfortunately, in this battle, we also have a case of a teammate being a team killer. As you saw there, that P-38 tried to team kill the A6M2 because he's flying a Japanese aircraft. I don't know what the hell that was on about, but yeah, that was not a great start to the match, but even then, I reported the P-38 and that was the end of that incident, because soon enough, they both call it quits and they both stop trying to team kill each other. So, I'm obviously jumping ahead at 8 times speed. It will take a lot longer to set your aircraft up. As you can tell, most of the match I spend climbing. And once I hit an altitude of around 5k, give or take, that's in meters by the way. I don't know the actual conversion, I know that's around about 5k. You'll notice immediately that most of the enemy team is on the deck, but I'm also keeping an eye out around me. This is important. As you saw earlier, there was a guy named Bjorn Andreas. Fair enough, he's been shot down now. But the point is that I'm still keeping an eye out for any potential high altitude threats that may be in the area. Because we don't know if everything's on the deck right now. There might be, but they might not be. And as a result, it's important to not only get your airspeed up, ready to dodge, but to also keep an eye out around you as you enter an area. So as I'm moving in, most of the enemy team is over here. They're not exactly playing it smart. They saw our ground pandas, saw blood in the water like a bunch of sharks, and dove in for the friendly ground pandas. As a result, this is something you can capitalize on. Obviously, I'm making my way over here. I'm not going to have a particularly amazing match. I think I only get 3 kills. But as I'm also watching the battle and also explaining it to you, I'm obviously keeping an eye on those two, because obviously those two could still scrap, and I may have to get involved with that. But also, I'm reading which target is going to be the best for a priority target situation. If you've watched my video on that, you'll understand what situation I'm in. Of course, I'm miles above them. I've got a crap ton more both airspeed and potential energy to use up, so I can take this nice and slow. So I'm keeping an eye on the area, and I'm also keeping an eye on what I think is the best target, and I deemed the J21 to be the best target. Main reason for that is because, well, the other teammates were handling the other Muppet, like the 202, who was ground pounding, and the J21 is the most agile of all the planes that were left, other than the Spitfire, who was crippled. And after using my airspeed, I go back up, because obviously he cannot match me, especially with his damage. I then flip it back round onto his tail, and get ready to finish him off. It's all about reading the situation and what's best to deal with. And there we go, that's my first kill. And of course, I'm resetting my climb to 15 degrees. That's what I climb in Hellcats and Thunderbolts as well. But of course, notice how my teammate over there in the XP50 has just killed that 202. The last one remaining over there is a BF-110 G2. And there's also a P-39 who's over there helping the XP50. So I decided, okay, even though we are a slow climbing fighter, we don't have to climb in this mode. The reason for that? That's Spitfire. He's crippled, he's taking quite a bit of damage, he's trying to fly back to base. Not on my watch, mate, because last I checked, a Spitfire's not outrunning a wound-up Hellcat. And I found it cute how he was still trying, but unfortunately, he can't escape. He's woken the dogs of war in this engine compartment, let's put it that way. But of course, it's always good to keep an eye out regardless, because you can still get bounced, because you never know what's left on the enemy team. I didn't know there was a Leo left, so there's that. But it's always good to keep an eye on the situation and make sure to look around as you're engaging a target. So I killed the Spitfire there, but immediately after that, I then reset for some more altitude. I don't need a lot of altitude because the last enemy is on his runway and I've just spotted it over there. But that little bit of extra altitude can not only give you some potential energy, but you can also turn that into airspeed over time. Of course, after chasing down the Spitfire and the 110 has just been shot down, I can now turn that airspeed that I used to catch the Spitfire back into a bit of altitude. That's the important part here. So I'm obviously watching the last enemy aircraft, which of course I didn't know at the time it was a Leo 451. I actually assumed it was a BF-110 in the battle. But after a minute or so of climbing, I'm in a good position. Depending on what it is, I should hold all the cards. But of course, as I mentioned in the match at the time, I didn't know it was a Leo. I assumed it was a BF-110. So obviously I am I am making sure that my team also knows, because at the end of the day something could go wrong, and as a result you have to make sure your teammates are aware of what you're doing, and most importantly, you're not going to be climbing faster than half your teammates anyway, so it's always nice to give them an advantage over the enemy, whether that's marking a target or pointing out something that they may have missed. So, committing to the dive, I make sure to keep an eye out on the area, because at the end of the day, situations can change, but of course this is the moment where I spot it as a Leo 451, and the little shit tries to turn for his runway, because that's all these people try and do nowadays, but you're not getting back to that runway. You'll notice there as well, my Hellcat did start to compress a little. That's something you'll need to learn over time, of when your aircraft compresses, but that's just part of the course if you're playing a specific aircraft anyway. And that is kill number 3 at the end of this match. So I hope that gives you some advice and some tips and tricks of how to play a slow climbing aircraft such as an F6F, a P-47, etc. And as a result, I hope that really opens your eyes, because some people in this game immediately strap bombs and rockets to things like Hellcats and P-47s, and they just throw them away. I don't like seeing that personally, and that's why I figured if I make this video, that may give some people some advice. Of course, you may have your own opinions about this advice, you may think it's complete bullshit, that's fine. It's the internet after all, everyone has their own opinion. But if this did help you out, please do let me know in the comments below, and well, I'll get around to making more of them, that's for certain, and most importantly, I enjoy doing them anyway because it gives me a chance to expand my knowledge to other people. But anyway, I'm going to let you guys off. I hope you enjoyed today's video on slow climbing aircraft, and I will see you all on the next one.